Welcome, Ellyn Ruthstrom. I'm so excited to have a chance to talk with you.
I was so honored to be invited to into your class.
Oh, well, my goodness. I just see you as such a leader in the bisexual movement and advocacy. And so I think that this is great to have you on board for this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Maybe you can start out by telling us a little bit about how you became an expert on bisexuality or an advocate for bisexuality and some of the things you've done. And you can start with what you're doing now and move backwards or start at the other end and move forward, whatever works for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those people who is just always an activist, no matter what the issue is. And so once I decided I was bisexual, that became a part of my activist life. So I really I thought I was straight early on. I didn't have early same-sex attraction. So it wasn't until, I really kind of came out very end of my 20s, around 30, when I started coming out to everybody else around me. And then I started looking for community. And so as I moved around, was living in different places. I would just look for bi community and try to get involved with it. So then, when I ended up in Boston, of course, Boston is a hotbed of bisexual activity here. I mean, I feel so lucky to be in a community that has so much. It's got this tenured community, and on lots of different levels. There's a social level, there's a political level, there's all sorts of things going on here. So that's where I really dug in here and became very involved with the Boston Bisexual Women's Network. I edited the newsletter for many years, and then also getting involved with the Bisexual Resource Center. And eventually I was the president of the Bisexual Resource Center for 10 years during a very kind of crucial time for the bi community. So it was just all of those different things looping together. And I really felt that, looking over the span of the bi movement, I think that the BRC was created, first of all, as the East Coast Bisexual Network, 1985. That was a really big time in the kind of mid 80s, when bi people were looking to get more visible within the bigger movement, and trying to get more visibility for bi plus people in general. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, as ECBN turned into BRC, because it really had evolved very quickly into serving the national community. It was one of the first projects it's had, and Robin Oakes helped do this, was the Bisexual Organization Group, the Bisexual Organization and Group listing, so people could find each other. And I think that's kind of the core of what the bisexual movement has always been about. It's building community connection for each other, because it's so difficult to find each other. And that, of course, was initiated pre-internet, or at least very, very, very the beginning of the internet. So even though the internet might have been around, a printed copy of something was still very useful. And then once the internet came along, then we put it on the internet. It looked like you were going to ask me something.
Yeah, this history is so great, and I'm thinking there's so many people who have no idea, what does that look like before the internet? Can you describe, how would you find people in other places and know what they're doing?
Right. Well, that's for at least bi community. I think it was very much like any other grassroots group, that there were in the Boston area, the Cambridge Women's Center was a huge place for women's organizing. So if you wanted to start a group, you would go to the Women's Center and put up a flyer and say, women who want to talk about being vegan, or whatever you wanted to do. you just put up a poster with a phone number on it, and you start organizing. You start talking to each other, and that's basically how early organizing of bi groups happened. Once you got a good group of people, then you have, you've got people connected. You've got a phone chain. You've got just different ways that you can keep moving forward. And I think that's, I think it is funny to people that they think, what did you do? How did you do it? But whatever era you exist in, you use what you can, you just use the tools.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for that. Keep going with your story. This is fantastic.
Where was I? Yeah. So then I think that with the BRC, I think one of the important things for me when I was really involved with it, was that I felt that the organizations, and there are a lot of different bi organizations spread across the country, weren't connected enough. And we weren't talking to each other enough. And so really early, was probably around 2010 when I started talking to other leaders. I remember it was a big conference in Minneapolis. It was one of the Creating Change conferences. And I started talking to the other leaders, and I was like, we really need a bisexual leadership roundtable where we can talk to each other. And that kind of took some time to get people on board and talking about it. And it took a couple years to really kind of get it going, but we started having meetings. I think 2012, we had our first small meeting, which was kind of the different BiNet, BOP from Minneapolis. And there was only a group of maybe about 10 to 12 activists. But it was really great to have that space where we could start talking to each other, start organizing together, and then expand. And so over the course of a couple of years, it really expanded to invite a lot more leaders from around the country to communicate with each other. And that was so important too, to the work that we did when we got to the White House. And so in 2013, that was when the BRC and BiNet teamed up to co-sponsor the first Bisexual Issues Roundtable with the White House. And that really took probably just those 3 or 4 years of planning and meeting the right people and talking to the right people. And also at the same time, there were different things going on in terms of data. And I think that was the key. It was like a perfect storm where the activism was happening and the data was coming together for the community at the same time. So we were able to be seen. The bisexual community was able to be seen in the numbers where it hadn't been before, because they used to lump the gay and lesbian and bisexual people together and you didn't see us. So then suddenly, or not suddenly, but fortuitously, more research was being done that made us visible. So we got to see that we were the majority. And those statistics were huge, to be able to say that we are over 50% of the LGBT community. Plus, then some of the statistics came out about the different health disparities. And those really were things that people wanted to take seriously. Obviously, they're very serious issues, whether it's depression, suicidality, heart disease, poverty, lots of really significant issues. And that data showed that the bi community was suffering to a very high degree. So that brought so much weight to that first meeting, and then the follow-up meetings in 2015 and 2016, that people really started taking the community issues more seriously because we had the information to back it up. And I don't know.
That's such a beautiful description of how research can really support advocacy. Advocacy then supports research, just that interconnection, that's such a great narrative you're providing.
Absolutely. And I know you'll remember this, Tanya, because you were involved with this too, where Judy Bradford was at the White House meeting. She was somebody with the Fenway Institute, very, health related, research related. And she came out of that meeting determined to be a strong bi ally. And she created that first meeting that you and I were at Fenway to bring the bi health research people together. And that, again, was just part of that synergy going on, that once the information gets to the right person, that person can then go and create something else. And I just value Judy's allyship so much, that she stepped forward to do that. And that activity has created connection for bi health researchers. So
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely. And that's such a lesson in terms of the way, folks who aren't bi, but are in prominent positions in LGBTQ organizations or non-LGBTQ organizations can really take that role of being a bi advocate. And what a difference Judy made in that
she
role.
did.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And we all wish that there were more people in just, LGBTQ organizations who would do that.
Yeah. Mm. Fantastic. So you had mentioned there the some of the pieces then that came together with the White House, and I don't know if you want to tell more of that story of sort of what happened and the role of that in terms of the movement and advocacy.
Yeah. Well, I would say the 2013 meeting was definitely a big one for the health disparities. Judy's activism was great, but also actually it inspired the BRC to go back. That was September 2013. And in March 2014 is when the BRC launched Bisexual Health Awareness Month. Because again, it was all that information kind of that we were going through is like, oh my God, we really have to draw attention to the health disparities. So that was another big thing that has continued to grow, and really internationally, because a lot of bi groups and such in other countries often draw attention to Bi Health Awareness Month. So that was key to that. We also made some really interesting connections with the partner violence issue, because I believe it was, I don't remember the actual date, but within 2013, I believe, was when that other major research came out that was able to show how severely, in particular, bisexual women experience partner violence, but also bi men. And so that, again, that data helped to, again, bring more awareness for people to acknowledge that this was happening to the bi community. So those are the things that I remember so much that keyed together from that meeting. From more with the 2015 and 2016, in particular the 2016, I think fondly of that because it was more celebratory. I think because it had both some pieces of it that were very much about community awareness and education, but also there was beautiful sharing of poetry and music and that sort of thing. So it was our biculture plus the bi issues together, and that was real. And it was the largest of the gatherings, and so people were just from all across the country were able to come together for that meeting. And of course, that was September 2016. We know what happened in November of 2016. And that unfortunately, in some ways, put the kibosh on that the momentum that we were having within being able to work with the US government to make change. So everyone obviously is kind of very enthusiastic about a Biden administration to see what kind of traction we can get again. We know they're listening to the LGBTQ community from the bigger organizations, but it will be significant again if some bi leadership can get within that, within those meetings to see if the bi community can also be visible.
I just came up with a slogan right now as you're saying it. I thought,
Oh yeah,
putting the bi in the Biden administration.
ooh, perfect.
Yeah, but I love all this work that you've done to cultivate community, and one of my experiences of having been, and I remember this from the first White House bisexual community policy briefing, the one in 2015. That was the largest group of known bisexuals that I had ever been a part of. And then I started going and sort of creating more opportunities for bi people to come together different places, and it makes such a difference to people to have that community. So I think that your message about the power of community is really resonating with me.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that is was a very powerful moment for a lot of people who were in those rooms, to just look around and see it. In fact, I don't know if you remember, we have the unveiling of the bisexuals moment where, we asked everyone, if you identify within the bi plus umbrella, please stand up and look at each other. And it really is a powerful moment to go, yay, we're the majority in this space right now. Yeah, and when I go to conferences, and when we'll be going to conferences, and there's a bi part of it, I'm always so saddened because one of the first things that a lot of people say is, I don't have bi community where I live. And it always just breaks my heart because I feel very privileged to be in a space that I can access it so easily. And I know how difficult it is to do that kind of grassroots organizing, to do that kind of thing of sitting in a room waiting to see if other people will show up. And sometimes they don't for the first meeting or the second meeting or whatever. But I always encourage people to keep at it because it takes a certain momentum sometimes to get a new group going, word of mouth, as well as just that feeling within a group that that people want to return to. Like once they've experienced it, then they want to come back. Yeah. And so you've got to kind of wait for that to catch fire.
And so the Bisexual Resource Center now, it is not just a national, an international resource for folks. So can you maybe describe a little bit about the BRC and what does it look like now in terms of what it is and how it functions?
Right. Well, I will say I am no longer on the board so I'm speaking from someone who's still involved with the organization, but not from the board level. So the BRC really supports, like as you say, national and international people who come to the BRC and say either it's a personal question or it's can you help us find a resource for such and such, or do you have a speaker who can talk to us about such and such? It is kind of a bisexual warehouse to access. It also definitely has always considered one of its prime things as a builder of resources. So whether it was just the original website, the original organizational listing, which then became the Bisexual Resource Guide. And now the BRC continues to publish 2 other books, Getting By, Voices of Bisexuals Around the World, and Recognize the Voices of Bisexual Men. So those 2 books, anthologies, are really wonderful gateways for a lot of people to find out more about by culture, by community, by experience. And just very often for people to say, oh my God, I am not crazy. Other people are like me. So those are the resources that they create. The website is a great space. Again, like I mentioned, the Bisexual Health Awareness Month, and also the work that all bi organizations do in creating the Celebrate Bisexuality Day or the Bisexual Visibility Week, whichever way you want to see it. I know some people have wanted to create September as another month for bisexuality, but I personally, that is just too much energy for me. It's exhausting.
Can you talk a little bit about Celebrate Bisexuality Day, Bi Visibility Week?
Sure. I always have such a good time with what we call it CBD, Celebrate Bisexuality Day. And it's an opportunity to do something for the community, create an event, get people together. The Boston community, in the course of over, God, I don't even know what year it is now. It's over 20 years old now. It's maybe 23, 22 years old. Each year we've done a lot of different things. Sometimes we did something about health. Sometimes we did a panel of different creative people. We've done a movie festival. We've done, just lots of different ways that you can just draw attention to the community, to the culture, bring people together to celebrate. Often that we've had an event in downtown Boston where people can get together and have a good time, and then also like maybe have a quiz about famous bisexual people, or just different fun activities. And I know that many organizations around the country and the world do really great activities. You've probably been involved with some, so
yeah,
absolutely. They're really wonderful.
And I love this idea that there's this opportunity to do something for community, create an event. I think Bisexual Health Awareness Month is always such an important thing, but I have to tell you that bisexual health is kind of a bummer, in a lot of ways. With all the health concerns. I mean, we can also talk about resilience and the things that we can do to support bisexual health and interventions and all those things. But Celebrate Bisexuality Day, I always feel like this is just for hooray, and that's letting people see the community and see how many people there are. And it's sort of like National Coming Out Days like that also, and so that those are opportunities to really, we don't always have a sense of how many people there are. And also, I love being bisexual. I think being bisexual is glorious, and getting to celebrate that is just such an important piece of community.
I agree with you. And we have great colors, don't we?
Yes, we do. Love your shirt. My student knitted me a scarf. So
wow. She knit that. That's fabulous.
I know, pretty amazing.
So, I know.
Well, this is great. Let me ask you, what do you think bisexual people need in terms of advocacy, resources, community? You've done so much and created so much, but at this point, what's needed still?
Yeah. It really, I think, still is visibility and validation. I feel that we've come so far within the LGBTQ community that luckily, not even luckily, I mean, we fought to get invitations to things. We fought to get to the table. It was not just like, you know, out of the kindness of their heart. We really had to fight to get there. And so did the trans community. You know, the bi and trans communities were really interlinked before the trans community became a part of LGBTQ community. The bi and trans communities worked together a lot for visibility. A lot of people don't know that, but it's very true. And so we fought to get there. I think that though that still we can be an afterthought, and that is it just shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. And that's why and I'm sure you and lots of other people, if you can drop into the discussion, we are 50% of the LGBTQ community as often as possible. There is a reason our needs need to be addressed. And I just think it's so important to keep pushing on that. And yeah, that for me, it's just always the biggest thing to get visibility and validation.
Fantastic. That's such an important message. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want people to know about bisexuality or about you and the work that you've done?
Gee. Well, I guess, you know, like I love that, like, you reached out to me to do this, and I love that we have this connecting across the country of people who know you can turn to other people for, you know, more information about such and such, and so, oh, you know, he is the one who does that, she's the one who knows this. And I hope to keep that going too, that we need to stay connected to each other, even if we're thousands of miles away from each other, to make sure that we keep that going and keep passing that connection on to the next generation of activists.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, the bi network, you know,
The bi network. And
yeah.
one thing I will say, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I want people to stop arguing about what they call themselves and talk more about what we can do for each other. Because you know, I don't care what you choose as your identifier, but I don't want to waste any more time arguing about it. I just want to work together with people to improve our community.
Absolutely. There's so much to do.
There is so much to do.
And yes, and so much common ground to come together to support each other. Oh,
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ellyn. If people want to follow you or connect with you, are there ways that they can do that?
Sure. I am on Twitter as Ellyn Ruthstrom. Surprise. And I'm also on Instagram. I think it's, gosh, what am I on Instagram? It might be Ellyn Ruthstrom. There might be something in there as well, but you can probably find me. Yeah. And also I'm the executive director of an organization called Speak Out Boston, which is speakoutboston.org. So check us out. We do wonderful LGBTQ plus speaking in all sorts of spaces. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Ellyn, thank you for your long history of activism and advocacy and organizing. That's made a difference for me. And so I just have so much appreciation for you and the work that you've done.
You are welcome, Tanya. Thank you for keep on moving the ball forward the way you do. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you.